If this goes on, don't panic. Bringing hope to the world through speculative fiction.
Hello and welcome to the 6th episode of If This Goes On, Don't Panic Quarantine Club. Today we have a dueling interview with Ademal and Barron, the creators of the Ethnis RPG world. We also have some giveaways at the end, as always, this time from Flame Tree Publishing and from us. So let me introduce the guests real quick. Ademal, he is a professional software developer, 2-bit author, and aspiring artist, using World Anvil to create a centralized lore and mechanics codex for his ongoing project. A pen and paper, grim bright, science fantasy RPG set in a distant future. He adds in here that there are 20 races, 2 homeworlds, 6 major factions, and other such big, over-ambitious numbers, which I think is hilarious. And we also have Barron. His passions and experience come in the form of video games and design, Unreal Engine, C++, and Ruby. He is an aspiring gunsmith as a hobby and collects and shares knowledge on firearms. So if anyone out there is interested, let him know. Look him up. So welcome, guys. And of course, Diane and Rachel here as always.
Pleasure to be here.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for coming on, guys. I'm really excited about this interview because I want to know more about this universe that you have created. It's so involved. Going to your site, like you could literally be here for hours going down rabbit holes. I would have to devote a day to completely understand it, I think. So let's start with
At least a day.
At least a day, like the whole day. Like I get up, right, and get my coffee and sit in front of the computer and then, take pee breaks and go to bed. That's,
That's us writing it.
Yeah, sure.
I bet.
In what, 2 years?
10 years, did you say? 20 years?
Yeah, Ademal, how long? You've been working on Ethnis since before high school, right?
Yeah, so if you want to go by like the earliest date of Ethnis, I was writing down stuff for it when I was 6 or 7 that still is at least in name or in some form in the lore. And so it's about 21, 22 years old overall. And then in college, I started making a real concerted effort to world build. And so it's about 11 or 12 years old there. And then Tyler joined me. Tyler, same guy, joined me a few years into that. So he's been a regular contributor.
Sure thing. So my question was, I realize it's kind of impossible because it's such a huge project and setting, but what's the elevator pitch? What is Ethnis?
So Ethnis, if I was trapped in an elevator with someone, or rather had them trapped in the elevator with me and was trying to get them interested, I would tell them that Ethnis is a sci-fantasy setting set 600 or 700 years in the future from now. Humanity has met aliens, learned that we're not quite as cool as we thought, and so we're taking our part in this larger scope universe. We're not necessarily at the bottom because they're just getting out into exploring the stars as well. And so the current state of the setting, which I'll explain why I mean current state in a moment, is that it is after a expansion and collapse of civilization, where at one point civilization reached out to the stars, settled a bunch of worlds, and collapsed. And now it's getting back on its feet, and so you're going back out and re-exploring these worlds to see which colonies survived, which ones grew on to be civilizations, and sometimes even finding new worlds. And so I said its current state, and that's because we have several sort of snapshots throughout history that major stories happen at, or that we've even run games in. And so the timeline focuses on a present point, but we've been building this about 20,000 years of history leading up to the current point, and some of it's even playable, at least among close friends, not necessarily written down for any coherent way, but it's there. So it's a platform not just for a tabletop game, but for stories and eventually video games.
No, that is really awesome, right? It's an interesting thing because I know that the RPG is still in development, and the novels are forthcoming, right? But it's not like there isn't a huge project and a product already available, right? Like this whole setting they've been putting everything up on World Anvil. These guys are a star example of what you can do with this platform. If you create a World Anvil world, right? You can read about all their, a bunch of their different races and worlds, and the different planets have different, the climates and the conditions are really imaginative. It's amazing. I've really been enjoying it. Yeah. So, what do you mean by Grim Bright exactly? You said it was a Grim Bright setting.
Yeah. So, to kind of lead into the answer there, I think we're all kind of familiar with D&D alignments, like lawful good, lawful evil, chaotic good, all those. Mm-hmm. So someone took the Grimbright or Grimdark term that Warhammer 40k uses, and they turned that into a full grid. And at the bottom right, where chaotic evil would be, you've got Grimdark, and at the top left, where lawful good would be, you've got Noble Bright. And what each kind of half of that word means is if it's a Grimdark universe, it's a world where things can't be improved, everyone's horrible, everything's horrible, you're just trying to make ends meet. And then if you're in a Noble Bright universe, everything is ultimately good, and you're just pushing back the forces of darkness, every 1,000 years or so whenever it wakes up. Grimbright is kind of it's like the lawful evil, where the universe is poised on the precipice of horrible things, and it comes down to people to show their best colors, even in the face of total adversity, and hold it at bay, against all odds. Like, maybe it's a losing battle. Maybe it can never be won, but it doesn't matter, because people will always dig their heels in and hold on to the light for as long as possible. And that's meaning enough for them sometimes to know that they let the light live on a little bit longer.
See, that's perfect, because that's what we would call hope punk, right? Hope punk, you're going to try, damn it, and you may fail, and things are maybe shit, but you're going to do it anyway, right? And hopefully you win, or hopefully eventually you win, and maybe the victory's Pyrrhic, but you still got to try, right?
Yep.
That's awesome.
Now I'm sitting here trying to define hope punk on that kind of scale. I don't know. I guess I'm lost.
It's an interesting scale to look at. There's definitely, you can kind of tie it a lot to a lot of video games. Like when he says Grim Dark, I instantly think Darkest Dungeon.
Yeah, definitely.
So it's the Grim Bright thing. The way I like to see it is, the world has messed up things in it. It is not a world that holds back; it punches. But its people are continuously striving to make the world a better place, and you can still find good within Ethnis. It's a good mix of the good and the evil.
Yeah.
I love it. Oh no, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh no. Actually, on the note of hope punk, I consider Ethnis to be an absurdist universe, which I don't know if you really know about absurdism or not, but for the sake at least of those listening, I'll explain it, which is absurdism is kind of the answer to nihilism. It's the acceptance that everything is bleak and that we're all kind of stuck in an algorithm of life where it's always going to have peaks and it's always going to have lows, and there may not be any meaning to it. And absurdism says, well, we're gonna fight it anyway, even if it's to the bitter end. It's better than just giving in to the nihilism. So it doesn't necessarily ascribe meaning. It just says whether or not there's meaning, we're going to do art. We're going to stand up and have pride. And so I feel like hope punk is a kind of it's something that evolves from that mentality, because that goes back to
sure,
French philosopher Albert Camus. And
right. Oh no, I was just acknowledging the reference. Fair enough. Yep.
Yep. And I've seen it a lot cropping up more in shows and stuff recently, where it's let's see, Bo Burnham has a special. Well, he has several specials of comedy, and if you watch like the I think there's 3 of them. It really, the first one is very nihilistic, and the last one is very absurdist, where he's just like, okay, I've gotten over my angst. You know what? Let's just create stuff and provide meaning through that. And you even see like similar arcs through the seasons of like Rick and Morty. Not so much the recent one, but the first few, where it's it's Rick hating everything and then kind of finding meaning by latching into his family a bit. So it's I feel like it's something that people are craving more and more.
Yeah, I would agree with that completely.
Yeah, me too. I was just going to say, I'm a big fan of Rick and Morty. I love it. I love the way it deconstructs all the science fiction tropes. And it's a weird thing, because I find that in the political circles that I associate with, because I tend to fall more, if we're looking at it, I'm a progressive. I tend to fall more on the left side of the spectrum, not liberal, progressive. There's a difference, right? And yeah, that's right. But I find that a lot of people in my circles don't get it, right? And they're like, oh, Rick's a horrible misogynist and a racist and a nasty person. And you're like, yeah, actually, that's right. That's totally true. And they're pointing out the flaws, right? And they're deconstructing the racist and misogynistic tropes that are way too often part of science fiction and fantasy settings, right? That's the point of him, right? And Morty's kind of like, I think he's our conscience, He's like the little voice going, no, we really don't want to do that. That's insane. And sometimes he's just like, okay, screw it. We're just going to do it because I just can't anymore, right? And I think most of us are like that. He's
our stranger in a strange land, but it's not just physically strange, it's emotionally strange.
Absolutely. So, I'm not sure where to go from here. Right?
I've got ideas.
So much.
What? Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Okay. So we're talking about science fiction tropes, right? And we're talking about all your world building that the two of you have done. What has inspired you to build this kind of a world? What are you reading? What are you watching? I don't know. What games are you playing?
Everything. Like everything just gets involved in Ethnis. At least to me, like Ethnis is what I want out of life, and I know that sounds really sappy and cheesy, but it really is. And so I go around and like any movie I watch, whether it be a Marvel movie, whether it be a comedy, whether it be old or new. I think the most recent example I have is the Altered Carbon Season 1. And I just watch these shows and I just be like, wow, that was super awesome. Would there be something similar, or would there be something that I could derive that into Ethnis? Ethnis, since it's so absurdist, the sky's really the limit, whether it be on style or whether it be on technology or fashion or culture. there's so many different planets and so many different peoples and cultures that anything is possible. You can, I mean, I did a race, a kind called the Helic, a few weeks back, and there's Sazashi, who was very focused on the arts. And I wrote a little sample of one that is like a cowboy, so he gleaned, I forgot the line that Ademal gave me for him, which was really good. But essentially, he's a magician that dresses up like the old-fashioned Clint Eastwood-style spaghetti western cowboy. But he's still in that sci-fi setting, and he pulls out his wand out of his leather holster, and he can literally make you break into tears, or he can manipulate your emotions, and it's just insane. So Ethnis is just this amalgamation of everything, and inspiration can come from any source, really.
I like the scope of it, right? Ultimately, I think that, okay, if you wanted to boil it down, it's a science fantasy space opera setting, right? But, right, I mean, that's where you start. But I think a lot of people don't really, when you're writing a space opera, you got to think big. Like I took Anne Leckie's class on writing space opera, right? And she said that, right? Space must flow past the portholes like wine. And, I think that you guys have really kind of grasped the fact that in an infinite universe, there are infinite possibilities. So you really can have everything. And sometimes it's deadly serious, and sometimes it's utter lunacy, and sometimes it's both at the same time, and you're laughing while you're screaming. So...
Yeah, it sounds about right.
That's Ethnis in a nutshell, yeah.
Cool. Okay. Yeah, I love it. I love it because there's so much, right? It's so broad, and I love your spell slinger wizard there. That's really great. Obviously, since, I'm into Weird West settings, right? But,
absolutely.
Yeah, that's fantastic stuff. You guys actually do have a book out, right? I've been looking... What's that?
The book. Ademal, I'll let you cover your book. Man.
Yeah, I wrote that when I was 16, so the lore don't quite fit anymore. It was definitely like the turning point for me, because after that, like after I finished it, I was like, went on to do book 2, and I realized that I didn't have my universe well enough established, so I fell into the world building hole for the next 12 years or something like that.
Yeah.
So
college was a weird time.
I feel you. I feel that. You want to create yourself a challenge, serialize a novel. I tried this. Actually, I like it because, we all get really ticked off at, like, J.K. Rowling and George Lucas retconning their universe. Right? And we go back and we go, that wasn't in there. I read that book. And, I saw that movie. That wasn't there. Right? So I decided I wasn't going to do that. So it forces you to just live with whatever you've put down. And since, you didn't release the whole novel at once, you released it in pieces. So now you have to live with whatever you put in the first piece. And you have to figure out, well, how do I explain that with what's going on now? How do I make it work?
Yeah. I feel like we need to make a disclaimer on the book, though, because I see people asking about it in chat. It's a great book. I enjoyed it personally, but it's using a previous iteration of Ethnis. So a lot of it has been retconned since then. Ademal, I know you were trying to remove the book from stores, I believe, right?
Yeah. They're kind of a pain about removing it. If people want to support Ethnis, that's great, but I'd recommend they go to the Patreon instead of getting the book, because I don't really make any income off the book. So
it's kind of a very long ago, 16. That's over a decade ago.
Yeah. No,
gotcha.
it's fine. So, yeah.
Sounds like it's time for a second edition.
Oh, definitely.
We got a ton of stories in the works for Ethnis, that's for sure. I mean, I don't know, should we tease names, Ademal?
I mean, yeah, go ahead. I don't even know which ones you're thinking of.
I'm thinking The Hive.
The Hive, okay.
The Hive is both a story and a module. I mean, the same with Ethnis Eats, which haunts me. because it was my first. I'm not really much of an author. I'm still very new to authoring, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to write like a short story that is also going to include a cooking book, because I have another Helic whose name is Nartesi, who is just an absolutely the most flamboyant chef you've ever seen in your gosh darn life. And I have a short story around it, but I also want to make it interesting. So I was thinking about, I have a French friend who's really good at cooking, and he was providing me some recipe ideas that I could throw in and make it culturally involved in Ethnis. But we got short stories that we want to make. It's just finding the time to actually write them, right?
Yeah, a lot of it is... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was saying I feel you there. I teach a course on that. Anyway, go on.
Y'all should read Carmen Macchiato too. I'm pretty sure. I don't know if she did a recipe one, but she definitely wrote a story in Kickstarter format, which was awesome.
Oh, that sounds nice.
That sounds pretty cool.
I think it was in the best of 2015.
Right.
Oh.
I love including food in books. I think that's a really good way to get a feel for your cultures and your universe.
Well, a lot of our idea with it, and with quite a few ideas, quite a few of the stories, is that we wanted to introduce the universe in kind of non-standard ways. So, like a standard way that is good, and I'm not talking down on it, is like the soldier who's fighting across the frontier of the universe or something like that. That works. You've got your rebels and your soldiers, like Star Wars does it. Firefly kind of touches on it with Mal being his history. But what we wanted to do is focus on a lot of the more, I wouldn't say pedestrian aspects, but for example, Ethnis Each, which Tyler was talking about, is his story, is about Dartezi, who's a show host, a
Twitch live streamer.
Not even that, but he's more like the Anton. I forgot his name. The guy who traveled the world and actually showed other cultures and taught food while he was there. And so, through reading this story, you end up getting a on the streets tour of Ethnis. Another story we wanted to do, which sneakily teaches you about the economy of Ethnis, is one that deals with the fashion industry, where it's about these huge fashion conglomerates who converge on worlds just so that they can be the first one on the ground to steal any local cultural affects and fashion to sell back to the hub. And there's so much money in that these fashion companies end up hiring assassins and all sorts of stuff to undercut each other. And so it turns into very brutal. My working title for it is RuPaul's Game of Thrones.
If you didn't say that title, I was going to say it as soon as you were done, because I love that four-word premise.
That is amazing. That is a way to deconstruct colonialism. Fantastic. I want to read this now.
Yeah, so there's a lot of stories like that where we have the pitch and we kind of have an outline of a plot, but our focus is getting the lore Bible done and then turning to these stories, and we're chomping at the bit because we have so many of these stories that are ready to put on paper, and we're like, no, we have to focus.
And don't forget, we're also working on this slide at the same time.
Right. Yeah, I can understand that for sure.
Sorry, Alan, I ran over. I didn't see you done.
No worries. I was just understanding the immense amount of work that comes with any project, really, that you're serious about. I mean, we all put in so much work on this podcast, and there's four of us technically, and it's just oh my gosh,
it's a lot of work.
We still don't have time to do everything that we're supposed to be doing. You know what I mean? Not even close.
I get you.
Yeah.
But I do have a question. You were talking about the world building and putting the Bible together, and you mentioned economics specifically. So when you're trying to write about economics for the Universe Bible, right? How much research do you put into something like that?
Personally,
go ahead.
before I started it, I think the better summary, the good summary of it is I'm better with my money now than when I started. Because I've ended up having to learn so much about economics that I've improved my own situation in the process. So it's like I try to do like a good understanding of like not just capitalistic finance, but like how resources move around the world, because that's that is the basis of economy. Is there's something people want, so it's got to get there somehow. And we tend to think of like the big items, but sometimes that gets absurd. Like I was watching the World Anvil stream the other day, and the great GM mentioned that there was a whole like villages in China dedicated to creating handles for teacups for England.
Yeah,
and that was just a thing that happened for a while. There was a whole industry about it, and blood was spilled over it, and it's crazy to think that it was pretty much because the Brits were like, a cup would look better with a handle on it because this tea tastes better hot, and we live in a cold country, so let's put a handle on it. And suddenly that causes a ripple effect throughout economy. Yeah. So we try to keep pretty accurate, but at the end of the day, in terms of accuracy, Ethnis is meant to feel realistic, and if the numbers don't always add up, the point is more the kind of like the social side of it, Sure. Because you can fall into that hole with sci-fi where you just seek realism to the point that you need 5 PhDs just to do yes. a single sentence. It's just not reasonable to assume.
And Ethnis has a specific challenge because it's balancing the line between post-scarcity and scarcity. You have hub worlds that are so technologically advanced that post-scarcity is a lot of what's going on. And trying to fathom what that economy would look like has led to us making like our own political systems. And it's just a weird balance of having like your central economy, which is extremely strong, and pretty much just utopic, except it's not because it's Ethnis. And then you have your planets, which are just like wastelands, which they're lucky. They might still be using gold as currency or things like that. Like it's just such a wide range. And one thing that's exciting is seeing once people start really playing in Ethnis through the RPGs, what sort of economies and worlds that they're going to be making as well.
Yeah. It's just so interesting because what you're doing is in a way different than what a science fiction writer would do. Because a science fiction writer, they might have a focus, like, their novel might focus on economics to some degree, so they're going to research that and know about that. But they only have to worry about where they're taking their characters, right? They don't have to worry about an entire world necessarily, unless they want to, but they don't have to. Where you guys kind of have to,
Yeah, it's there are days where we're just like, why did we bite off this much?
Well, then we get inspired by one little thing we watch, like, all right, I'm down, I'm good, I'm golden. We have our dev jams when we really get stuck on things, and it's just like 6 hours of us it's just us talking about, well, what about this? What about this idea? Could this work? And then it's a very collaborative times between us.
So that actually leads me to another question, if that's okay, Diane.
Go for it.
Okay. So one thing that I was wondering about, because this thing was so huge, is like how do you cooperate on this? Like, how do you track what's going on, and how do you keep everything consistent? Because that's got to be crazy.
Oh, Jesus! Ademal.
So, I'd say yes. the biggest part, and I've actually had to push this on a lot of people in World Anvil, because a lot of people in World Anvil want to collaborate. Like they try to form groups. They're just like, hey, who wants to join my server? We're going to do a world build, and I'm like, that's doomed, because what it takes to find a good co-author like Tyler is you have to find someone who's basically on the same level as you, like philosophically, morally, like all degrees of outlook on the world. Because once you have that, there doesn't really need to be a huge sync. Yeah. Like I can, I can ask him to write about something, and he knows what Ethnis is supposed to be. So I can guarantee that aside from like maybe some minor fact checking, he's going to write something that fits thematically. And that's not a common trait. And if people out here who are real builders, they want their co-author, that's what it's going to have to take for them too, is finding that person. So, but in terms of like the mechanical end of things, I'll let him answer that, because I think.
Well, it's really funny that you say you got to get someone on like the same page, because it's really true. Again, like before I met Ademal, I would describe myself as a Mountain Dew chugging Call of Duty fanboy. And it's funny, I remember the first game of Ethnis I had when I first was like, because I never even played tabletops before. I thought it was the stupidest thing ever. I'm like, what the hell? What is this stuff? And then I played one in Ethnis, and I was just in it instantly. And it's been like 10 years, and I think I'm one of, sometimes I wonder if I'm one of Ademal's longest running projects, because working with him so closely over 10 years is just, it's changed my worldviews in a lot of ways. Whether that be good or bad, I'll leave that up to the listener to decide. But if you want a co-author, you really just have to like realize that it's a slow process, and you're going to have to really know this person on a personal, philosophical level. Because as Ademal said, that's what it requires. If you're working on a really in-depth project, that's what it requires to keep everyone working on the same page. But yeah, mechanically speaking, we've gone through a lot of solutions. To do a Trello, Coggle, all sorts of crap. Oftentimes, I find the best way to collaborate is just having open lines of communication, and pretty much almost every morning we have a morning coffee. We are very blessed in the fact that we work in the same day company, our day jobs. Right. And so every morning before this whole coronavirus thing, we would sit down for 30 minutes and have a coffee and talk Ethnis, and just kind of talk like, hey, what are you excited about? What are we doing? And that, to me, has probably been the best way to stay collaborative. And other than that, just having a Discord server where we mention what we want to do, and we list these things down on the Discord server. That's kind of been the best way.
Which reminds me, actually, your Discord is open to everybody, right?
Absolutely.
So I will put your Discord link in the chat here. I was meaning to do that, and I will do it now.
I have a question for you guys.
What's up?
In regards to, Ethnis and the world that you've created with that, do you think that it'll be something that continues to grow indefinitely, or do you feel that you will ever work on a different world?
So, I've tried to do other projects.
Same.
Ethnis used to be set a lot further back in its own timeline, and I set up this other sci-fi universe with like 20 or 30 races and all these worlds and all this technology. And then Ethnis was like, that looks delicious. I'm going to eat it whole. And the whole thing got subsumed into Ethnis without a blink. I imagine there will be other small projects, but for the most part, like Ethnis is it's, for one, like I've been making it since I was so young that it's the filter for my worldview. Everything I learn kind of gets pushed into it. Mm-hmm. So it's really hard to separate it from myself. Yeah, it's something where like we know what we're building towards because we actually know the ending, so to speak. And that to us means that there's so much to tell within it, because I'm a big proponent that you tell the best stories when you kind of know when they're going to end, and what they're about. Like whenever I write a story, I actually have a few manuscripts on my Google Drive. I will sit down and write the whole thing start to finish, and then reread it and figure out what the heck I was trying to say, and that's the actual story. Even if I have to edit out half the story to make it work, I know I'm trying to work through something. And so Ethnis is kind of the same, where it's like we know the point of it. Now it's to really build it.
Mm-hmm. I was going to ask you if you felt like the world was real to you now that you've worked on it for so long.
We joke about it. We joke about, hey man, God, when do you think the Sazashi are invading? We got the plague and we got the happy leaders, so yeah, it's about time. We got to get our butts to Mars and save it before it gets obliterated. We make those sorts of jokes. But I mean, as for my answer to that question of is there anything else that you kind of any other projects? I mean, as Ademal said, I've tried small projects. I have my own little world that I'm constructing as well on the side, but Ethnis is primary bay. Ethnis is just, it's become so much of who I am, and like Ademal, I put a lot of my personal experiences into it, and I know Ethnis is like the playground. It is the stomping ground, and I don't see a time of it ever being like we won't have anything else to add. Mm-hmm. Because it's just an infinite amount of worlds. Whether or not we stay in the same timeline, I think that's a different story. Because I think each one of these different time zones that we have, these eras, could be very almost feel like entirely different worlds. If you're used to one of them or not. So I think we gotta. If it's ever going to end, then we better invent immortality because that's what's going to take to get it done.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
It's so cool. I hear what you're saying about the collaborative thing, right? I collaborate with my husband on our worlds. Basically, I write the stories and he does the game stuff, right? And you do have to kind of maintain that whole, okay, are we both going in the same direction? What is, where's the next move? What's the next logical thing that takes priority? And you do have to constantly double check with each other on that, even though we have our own spheres where, I'm because I tell him repeatedly, you're the master, right, of the game stuff, right? Because you are better at that than I am. So you have final authority, but I strongly feel that this would be a better path, right?
It's kind of the thing of if you want multiple people working on a project, you either all need to be on the exact same page and able to form those boundaries, or you need to have a really strong project manager who's going to tell people no. And at that point, you're not really working on a passion project; you're working on a job.
Yes.
So I know where you're coming from.
Totally has to be a collaborative effort, and everybody gets to shape it. Right? Or, you've got a boss and an employer, and he should be paying,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. That's great. I see also that you have a light version of the RPG that allows people to get started anyway, if they want to do an RPG in your universe. Tell us, some of us are gamers, right? Rachel plays a lot of, she does game streaming on Twitch usually with her channel, right? I'm a role-playing gamer. Mm-hmm. Tell us a bit about your system.
Barron, you want to grab that?
Oh, Jesus. Okay. Practice. Test. Yeah, exactly. Pop quiz hot shot. So Ethnis Light, it is a way to explore Ethnis, and so we have two systems. There's Ethnis Light, which is what you were talking about there, and there's Ethnis Core. Ethnis Core has been in development for since college. It's been something that has gone through many, many iterations, and we continue to evolve and play test it. Ethnis Light is not just an Ethnis project like Ethnis as in the world. It's a totally system agnostic system, in which it's a narrative driven RPG game, which uses a form of dice called fudge dice, which is a 6-sided dice, 2 positive, 2 negative, and 2 blank. The purpose of Ethnis Light is to give a system in which anyone can either explore Ethnis or they can port it over to their own worlds. So this is, a lot of it is a challenge to us as game designers to be like, hey, this is kind of a condensed version of what is going to be an Ethnis core, and we want anyone to be able to use it, to be able to explore their world. Because not everyone wants to be a game designer. Some people want to world build, and that's just it. They don't want to have to futz with, oh, how do I game balance this, or how do I make sure that my dice system is going to work properly. We are making Ethnis light so other people can explore Ethnis or explore their own worlds. At the end of the day, we have a couple of amazing world builders who I'll shout out right now. I think I see two of them in the chat right now, Sierra Komodo and Happy. Both of them are either running or working on running a game using Ethnis Light in their setting. So it's a very unique system, and I really hope that at the end of the day, Ethnis Light will be known as its own thing, but also be able to bring people in to Ethnis and to Ademal and I's work. So, how'd I do, Ademal? Give me a grade.
I'd say that's an A+.
Oh my God, you're just sucking up. All right.
I can't win.
I think that it makes a lot of sense, and I admire your ambition in trying to do that. We decided to approach it by approaching one game system at a time. So
Yeah.
that's really awesome. I should probably spend more time in your Discord and find out how you're doing it.
The way it kind of works for Ethnis Light, and the reason why we're kind of doing two at once is this is probably the fourth or fifth iteration of Ethnis Light, I think. I think a chunk of them I made solo because all they were was me taking like a week and saying, how can I distill the mechanics of Ethnis Core to its bare minimum, and is there anything I can learn from that? And it's resulted in simplifying a few mechanics, but this time we both tackled it together and we're like, this is playable. This is something that we can have as a standalone, and World Anvil Worlds can implement it. And so we've got, I think, how many?
We have about 8.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, we've got actually, I think, 9 now. 9 worlds in World Anvil who are pledged to use it, and we're helping them port it into their settings.
Kind of a circle world builders things where everyone who's joining Ethnis Light, it's going to be like a cross collab of like they use Ethnis Light, which helps us, and they are able to play games in the world, which we can help promote them. So that's kind of I guess, a business side of it in a way. There's a lot. There's a lot going into Ethnis Light, but I guess the core takeaway is setting agnostic, narrative-driven, dice-based gameplay.
That is awesome. That is really cool. I like the way. I was really eager to feature you guys, right? In part because I think I get where you're coming from, and I think it definitely fits our theme and what we're trying to do here. But also because there's so much going on in the world of creativity right now, particularly in the science fiction and fantasy field, where people are taking different approaches to things. And I find that it's almost impossible to make a living entirely just writing anymore, right? Like it's very difficult. So you have to find other things and other ways. And I find that a lot of this is a bit like internet busking. You guys know what busking is?
Oh, it rings a bell, but not off the top of my head.
Busking is where you go take your instrument or your performance stuff and you go to the street corner and you try to find a good one that's really well populated and you set up and you play, right? And people hopefully toss a few coins your way or a couple of bills if you're lucky, right, while you're performing. I find that creativity these days is a lot like that, only on the internet. And you guys are taking a novel approach because you're Tolkiening it. You know, you're building the world from the outside in, as opposed to starting with a single point, the character, or the basic plot, and then building out, like most people do, right? And I think that in and of itself has value. I mean, obviously, there's been hundreds, at least, of books published about Tolkien's universe. People will buy, just Elvish dictionaries, and not a lot of people do that, right? Like, and I think people think you have to have the story established first before people will invest in the world. And I disagree, right? I think that sometimes you can invest in the world first and then check out the stories, right? And I love the way you guys are going at it from that perspective. And I really wanted to highlight it because I think that more people could be doing that,
So this actually goes to an interesting conversation I had with Demetrius, the coder behind World Anvil. And he has a vision for World Anvil that he was happy that I kind of nailed it on the head in describing to him my goals for Ethnis. A lot of people, self-included, and I know quite a few friends, won't play games like World of Warcraft, or they won't read a full book series, but they'll go online and they'll tour its wiki, and that'll be their experience. And that's what they enjoy, is just touring a wiki. Like, I'll go through the lexiconum, the Warhammer 40k lexiconum, and just learn about the lore, even though I don't really play the games that much or at all. And there's a space for this sort of piecemeal storytelling where you navigate a world story at your own pace. And that's really our goal. Is like, for example, one of the stories we want to do is called Feedback Loop. And it's about how a type of AI called icons gain civil rights.
Awesome.
And it's not going to be a story told in one piece of prose. It's going to be, I think, 5 or 6 articles, 7 or 8 different unrelated chapters of prose, and chat logs that you can scroll through. And that's the story. Like, you're not reading a book, you're exploring the lore and learning the story, and everyone who does it is going to maybe walk away with their own opinion, because some of these will conflict. And so the first one you read might be the person you side with, and so everyone's going to have a different experience just based off of their reading order.
I think that's awesome. I agree with you completely. I read a lot of Warhammer 40k lore, and I do not play any version of the games at all, right? I watch a lot of video game movies where people have taken the narrative plot line of, say Assassin's Creed, for example, right? And they've put it all together so that you can get the coherent story without playing the game, right? And I suck at those kind of games, right? So I would rather just know the story. So for me, that's fantastic. And, we're seeing it's a lot more interactive and a lot more personal. And I think that you guys are kind of on the cutting edge of that. And I really think that this is going to be a wave of the future. We're going to see a lot more of it.
Well, fingers crossed we can get on top of that wave, then.
So what are you guys currently reading or watching? What are things that you're currently interested in that may be having an influence?
Altered Carbon was one. Ademal and I had a hangout before a lot of this started, and he introduced me to that show. I'm sad to hear that apparently the rest of the seasons aren't that good. But, Altered Carbon's one. I'm going to sound like, don't judge me, but I don't read that much, unless it's Ethnis, or other people's worlds on World Anvil. It's like, man, I don't know. Ademal, can you cover this? Because this is a hard question for me.
So I'm kind of in the same boat. And for a while, I was worried that because I've had a hard time reading these last few years. Just nothing's really been able to hold me book wise, and I think part of it is a lot of stories get genre trapped a little bit, or it feels like a rehash of something I've read. And I think the reason for that isn't like any weakness of writing or plot. I think these are very good, very strong stories, and I tend to enjoy what I do read of them. I think it's just that I'm almost plotted out, where it's like I'm tired of reading a narrative. I want to explore a world, and maybe that's me having a bad attention span and growing up on video games or whatever, where a lot of these worlds are learn at your own pace and in any order you want. Like, Dark Souls is a world that comes to mind where it defies you to learn it. So you actually have to dig in, and it's the reading is more of an archaeological dig than it is a narrative handed to you. Mm-hmm. And so I've been kind of growing on that sort of reading, where it's an explorative read. So books have been a little hard to get into for that reason lately, but shows like finished season 2 of Altered Carbon. I'm really digging it. I hope they deliver on the third one, because I know it's a trilogy. Mm-hmm. What else have I been reading? Actually, mostly like autobiographies and stuff like that. So like nothing related to sci-fi, because I forgot who said it. I think it was Stephen King or something, but he was like, if you're going to read a romance, if you're going to write a romance, read horror. If you're going to write a horror, read a Western. Like, don't read the genre that you're working in. And I've found that to be true. Like, if I read a lot of sci-fi, I end up finding that I'm writing that. Like, I'm writing what they wrote, and I don't want to do that. So a lot of my focus is usually on horror or like philosophical things, rather than going straight into sci-fi. And I think that probably shows in the writing.
No, that makes sense. I agree with you there. I find that I read in spurts. When I'm writing, I don't tend to do a lot of reading. I've been churning out a lot in terms of writing. So if you look at my Goodreads, you will see that my challenge reads 0. I've done none books this year because I've been, right? So I get it. And that makes sense. But I do find that sometimes reading the genre that you're writing in is helpful between working on stuff. So
yeah, get your heart back in it, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, well, we're running close to time here, it looks like. So I guess we'll ask you guys the question that we ask everybody when they come on the show, and that is, what is giving you hope right now?
Oh, Jesus. Ademal, you take this one first.
Oh, God. Put me on the spot.
I will.
I think I struggle with bleak outlooks. That's my shtick. I have a very bad view of the world, and this has not been helping it. I've seen good, and I try to focus on that. But my hope, my source of hope right now is, one, that I'm still finding the time to learn and grow, and people around me are still finding the time to learn and grow, and people are finding their own ways to cope. Friends I've had that were getting pretty worn out by quarantine a month ago have kind of found their rhythm since then, and I feel like this has been a good wake-up call to a fair few people, and I'm hoping it's one that's acted on. But I feel like there's like definitely a change of tone in people that's very much like, oh, we need to take this seriously. And that I find hope in, because a lot of my bad outlook of the world is based in the fact that I feel like we're a very lazy species when it comes down to a global scale for helping ourselves. And so seeing a lot more individuals, perk up and say, okay, it's time to reevaluate the world, like that gives me hope that maybe we will see changes that need to happen.
Awesome. Awesome. I agree with you.
Yeah. And geez, I still haven't been able to think of much. But
there is no hope.
There's no hope. No. There's always hope. If you don't believe that there's always some hope, then that something needs to change, because there always should be something to look forward to. Me personally, for example, I had a really crappy week at work yesterday. They saw me working during quarantine.
That's a good summary job. I had a bad week yesterday.
Yeah. Oh, geez. Yeah. Sorry.
Yes.
That's been my
I've
mind.
had those days.
But at the end of the day, I take a lot of hope in what I do outside of my job with Ethnis, and just knowing that, as Ademal said, I'm even through it all, no matter how tough everything is, I have some friends that I know would mean the world to me. I know that that Ethnis, I have to believe, and I have hope that Ethnis will be something big one day. And even if that just means that a couple of people's lives were really made better by it, like it just keeps me going, and knowing that, hey, I always have Ethnis to return to. I always have my world building. I always have my friends on Discord who share the similar interests. And yeah, I mean, I don't really think going into the world situation right now it doesn't really do anything good unless you're looking at things that you can act upon and make changes to. And I think if you want to give yourself hope, look at what you can do rather than what the world is doing to you.
Awesome.
Gotcha.
Good words of advice right there.
We do have a couple questions in the chat before we finish up here.
Sure.
Secondhand Samurai, the question: how do you feel about some of your readers taking part of your stories and running with it? How do you feel about this happening, and how does it reflect in your development? Is it destructive to the process or a source of inspiration?
I think Secondhand's asking for his own sake. Personally speaking, I absolutely love it. The fact of the matter is, Ethnis is a huge universe. And seeing people who get so involved that they write their own stories with it, that's the goal. That's a lot of the dream, is making a world that people feel comfortable enough in trying to explore on their own. I think the worst thing that could happen is you come up to me and say, hey, I got this idea for a story. And be like, you know what? That's a great idea. Some things have to change, but I really like it. Like, that's the worst thing that's going to happen if you're doing that. The best thing that happens is you make an amazing story, and I'm like, holy crap, this fits in so well. This is absolutely perfect. Great job. And I know Secondhand has written quite a few little short stories in Ethnis, so I absolutely think it's amazing. And I think if you keep doing it, it's just great. So, Ademal, anything to add?
Yeah, generally along the same line. Like, part of the reason why we jumped to the current timeline instead of the one we were working on before is because people came into the lore and they felt so overwhelmed with things they felt like they had to learn to play, and they did. So we moved ahead to a time where things are very fluid. Like, there's probably like 1,000 worlds in Ethnis by its current timeline. And we've designed about 7, and we only intend to design about 7 because the idea is once you take it, those are your worlds to call your own. And on top of that, like, as at least the core game, not so much Ethnis Light, as that goes on, we're going to move into the realm of like, well, you can even make your own races, and it's canon because they were alone on this road for a couple hundred years and used technology to adapt. So we want people to have that degree of customization, putting themselves in. The only concern I really get about it that's not a creative concern, but it's more of a business one, is I'm worried about people coming in, putting down fan work, and then maybe it's parallels to something we're working on, and that becomes like a copyright concern where someone feels like we stole their work.
Or if they make something offensive that we have to fight back against.
Yeah, so stuff like that, like, you know, anything that's outside of like the philosophical bounds of Ethnis or the goes into legal gray is where we get worried, because, you know, if we bring in fan work, it's usually fully credited and with permission, but it's, you know, it's with the understanding that if it's put on the site, then, you know, most of the time it's unpaid, it's fan work, but we will probably eventually look for other authors, depending on if Ethnis makes that kind of money. So we'll see. But overall, it's an extreme compliment to even get partial fan work, where it's like, you know, you guys can't use this, but this is my idea and how I'm going to run Ethnis. It's like, that sounds amazing. We gotta build more to support that, so that when you run the game, you know, you can bring that to life.
Nice.
Diane.
Sorry.
Diane,
Go ahead.
correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe there might be information on that on the syphilis site, right? What I would encourage you to do, Ademal, is go to the SFWA website and poke around there. There might actually be stuff posted there about that. And SIFWA is like the Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers Union, basically. So
Okay.
you might want to check that out.
Cool. Yeah,
That's it.
We have one last question from Sierra Komodo. In regards to the plans to build a universe foundation for your books, what methods do you think works best for keeping you focused on the subject matter relevant to your planned book and not fall down the rabbit hole of writing about some random item that you just referenced?
This one goes back to a bit of feedback I give most people for World Anvil, which is when you start your world, do your elevator pitch, but make it a long one. Like, you know, the 2-3 page spread of, this is everything I would need to know to get the nuanced view of your world. Not just like, you know, it's a space western. Like, tell me more. Like, you know, it's about this crew of people who are on the ship called the Firefly, and they, you know, they go out, they get into all these shenanigans. There's, you know, these powers that be. This is the tech level. These are the aliens or the non-aliens. You know, like stuff like that. Like, give us that overview. Then everything you mention in that description, write a page on that. Anything additional you mention in those pages, write another page. Everything further than that is too far from your core. Get that core stuff written out first, and then start going into the, you know, like the deeper stuff. Basically, if that first pitch is a web page and links off to all those other ones, don't write more than 3 or 4 clicks deep from that core until you're ready and have all that core stuff done. Which that's a hypocrite thing for me to say, because we sure as hell have not followed that rule. But that's the problem with Ethnis, is that people go on and they feel a little lost because there's some core pages we just haven't fully fleshed out yet, that we're just, everyone in the Discord knows what it is by now, that we don't really have an article on it because it's tribal knowledge. But when you come into it the first time, you're like, what's Suzashi? And we're like, oh, it's this empty page with a title. Don't you know what a Suzashi is? So yeah, it's, you know, keep your core done first and then expand out from there.
A problem for every writer, which is why alpha and beta readers are so important. It's so clear in your mind, and you know, do your thing, and then you present it, and then people are like, what are you talking about? And you realize you didn't communicate that effectively. So, yeah, always a problem. Secondhand Samurai also said, also, why are the Hisarabi the true heart of Ethnis?
Oh, jeez. Oh, secondhand. I love
because
it.
they triggered the start of major history.
They did.
Yep, there you go. That's entirely canonically true, and you'll figure out what that means eventually.
We know Secondhand Samurai from World Anvil, of course. You know, so that's what that's all about.
He's a cool guy.
Okay, I'm going to post the link to where do you start finding out more about Ethnis, but I'll also give the address here because we also do this as a podcast. It's www.worldanvil.com/W /Ethnis, which is ETHNIS. And that's the portal that leads you to everything. You can find their Discord there. You can find their social media links there. You can fall down the rabbit hole as I did. It was fun. I have more rabbit holes I'm looking forward to falling down in the future there.
Make sure you join the Discord. So if you get trapped too deeply, we can help you out of it.
I don't think I've checked it in a couple of days, but you know what? I'll make sure.
Awesome.
Yeah, cool. All right. Alan, before we wrap this up.
Yeah, okay, so we've got our weekly giveaway here. This week we have Cixin Liu's Ball Lightning. If you're not familiar with Cixin Liu, he wrote the extremely popular and award-winning Three-Body Problem. So you can get that, and you can also get a nice hardback of Chinese Myths and Tales from Flame Tree Press, which is a beautiful book if you're a book collector or if you're just interested in Chinese culture, which I personally am. So you can get these by volunteering. Well, basically you volunteer the winner. So this is somebody who's having a really rough time in quarantine, or this is somebody who's, maybe like working on the front line and is exposed to the stuff all the time and is having a rough time adjusting to that, or you just think needs, you want to say thank you to them. So you submit those people's names to us. You can do it there in the Twitch feed. You can email us at itgodon'tpanic@gmail.com. That's ITGO don'tpanic@gmail.com. You could hit us up on Twitter. You can hit us up, I don't know, where else are we? Facebook. You can, if you know one of us person.
Patreon.
Yep. Any of those places. What'd you say, Diane?
Oh, and a WordPress. So yeah, we're in a lot of different places. Just type in "If This Goes On, Don't Panic" and Google it, and you'll find us eventually. And anywhere that we are, we will be happy to take your nominations. And we send them the books on our dime, right? It doesn't cost you a thing; it costs us. So we would really love to reach out and give a little gift of hope and happiness to somebody that you think really needs it.
Yes. I will say one thing. Please keep it U.S. because I sent some books to Canada not too long ago, and holy crap, it is expensive to mail to Canada.
Oh, you suck, Alan. You suck.
Look. No, here's what we'll do. Seriously, here's what we'll do. If you want to do this, and you're in Canada, hit us up anyway, and we'll figure out something. Right, Diane? Maybe we could figure out something that we could send from Diane's, because Diane lives in Canada, so it's cheaper for her to send things. But I live in the United States, so
yeah. You know what? What sucks here in Canada is we don't have your guys' media rate. We don't have a media rate. Don't let the government in the States do what our conservative government did to our postal service. Don't do it.
Well, we're not going to have a postal service as of July, so it should be pretty interesting anyway. Let's go down that rabbit hole.
Are they canceling the postal service? Because I know that Trump's been going after it.
Yes, they're trying to cancel the postal service, and they have no budget after June, end of June, I think. So, anyway, let's not talk about that right now.
Hey, I'm sorry.
We're good on that rabbit hole.
It's all just inspiration for Ethnis.
Oh man. Oh god. So please put some names in there. If you're even questioning, just do it. And if here's something else I want to mention too is if you don't want to put that person's name in public, email it to me, and I won't read it. When we give the books away. A couple weeks ago, we gave books away. I didn't mention the person's name. A couple weeks before that, we gave some books away, and we did mention the person's name. It doesn't really matter. I know there might be some, feelings around that. So, yeah, we're cool both ways.
We'll have their address. If you don't, we'll just send it to you, and you see they get it. That's fine.
Yep, that's totally fine. We trust you. So let us know. Okay, so if you want to support us, we do have a Patreon. That's patreon.com/ifthisgoeson. You can find us there. We've been telling people you don't need to donate your money to us right now. We're doing okay. Give it to somebody else. There's tons of good foundations and places where you can actually help people that really need help right now. Now, when if and when I lose my job, we'll talk about something different then. But if you really feel like you want to support us anyway, go to our Patreon. If you can't afford to support us, monetarily speaking, just tell somebody else about us. That's really honestly the best thing you can do for us right now. Anyhow, we're looking to expand our base, so go and please tell people that we're awesome.
You think we're awesome, but yes.
We also have a new episode coming out, don't we?
Oh yes, we do. With Dreamforge magazine, the editors Jane and Scott Knoll.
Yeah,
that was quite a fun conversation.
An interview. That was great. Looking forward to hearing how that turned out. That's cool.
Yeah, it was good. It was good. I enjoyed it.
Yeah. And a show note. We're doing another one of these next week, right?
Yes.
Right, and then after that, we're not sure what's happening because conditions are changing for Alan at work. Rachel is going back to work, and we may end up moving the day, or we may end up having to go back to our regularly scheduled monthly edited streams or our podcast. So I'm not sure, right? So just stay tuned and we'll let you know. We'll keep doing it as long as we can.
Yep. That's the plan. We'll figure that out. We'll have better information hopefully next week. Haha. Let's hope. So thanks to our guests.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Good
Barron and Ademal, you guys are awesome, and I'm really glad you came on. Thank you very much for doing that.
Thank you.
It was a lot of fun.
Yep, thanks. All right, goodbye, everybody, and I'm going to read the credits.
Godspeed.
All right, If This Goes On, Don't Panic is edited by Alan Bailey with production by Sound Maiden. Our theme music is by Father Flamethrower, and additional music is by Christopher Snydrowski, and outro music by Sable Aradia. Intro by Dave Robison. A special thanks to our guests, Ademal and Barron. Thanks for supporting us, and we'll see you all again soon.
Bye, guys. Thanks a lot. Have a great afternoon, evening, or morning.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys.
Bye.